Disclaimer, this content is fictionalized recreation for entertainment and educational purposes only, not factual reporting. Viewer discretion advised.
My dear friends, welcome back to Cold Case Files. I'm Grace Thompson. In the small town of Ravenswood, 1974, a young nurse named Sarah Mitchell clocked out from her night shift and vanished into the fog. What investigators found, or rather, what they missed, would become one of the most baffling cold cases of the decade. But what if I told you that with modern forensic science, this 50-year-old mystery could finally be solved? That one overlooked clue, one dismissed witness statement, held the key all along. Sarah Mitchell was 26 years old, a dedicated nurse loved by her community. On the night of October 14th, 1974, she finished her shift at Ravenswood General at 11:30 p.m. Witnesses saw her walk toward the employee parking lot and then nothing. No struggle, no evidence, no motive. Just gone. The original investigation focused on three main angles: the jilted lover, her ex-boyfriend had a solid alibi, random abduction, no similar cases in the area, voluntary disappearance, but why leave everything behind? They interviewed over 50 people, searched over 100 locations, but hit dead ends everywhere. Now let's examine what they missed. First, the weather report that night. It had record-breaking fog. Visibility was less than 50 feet. This changes everything about witness reliability. Second, the parking lot layout, only one security camera, positioned incorrectly, a blind spot, perfect for an abduction. Third, the time discrepancy. Sarah's time card shows she clocked out at 11:30, but her car wasn't seen leaving until 12:15. What happened in those 45 minutes? This is where modern science changes everything. With today's technology, DNA analysis, touch DNA from her car could identify the perpetrator. Digital forensics, phone records, which didn't exist in 1974, satellite imaging could trace vehicle movements from that night. Psychological profiling, advanced behavioral analysis of potential suspects. Pause here. Look at this enhanced photo. Notice the shadow near the trees? Original investigators dismissed it as lighting anomaly. Today, we'd run it through AI enhancement. Based on all the evidence, here's a theoretical scenario. What if Sarah interrupted a burglary in progress? The hospital pharmacy had narcotics. What if she saw something she shouldn't have? The perpetrator wasn't targeting her specifically, she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This explains the lack of motive and the clean disappearance. So where does this leave us? The Ravenswood vanishing remains officially unsolved, but with modern technology and fresh perspectives, maybe, just maybe, justice could still be served. Now I want to hear from you. What theory makes the most sense to you? What clue would you have investigated differently? Should we revisit more cold cases with modern science? Imagine for a moment that night in 1974. The fog so thick you could barely see your hand in front of your face. Sarah walking to her car, thinking about normal things. Maybe what she would eat for dinner, maybe her plans for the weekend, completely unaware that someone was watching, waiting in that thick fog. The original police report noted several strange details that were never properly followed up on. A security guard reported hearing a car door slam around 11:45, but when he went to investigate, he saw nothing. A neighbor reported seeing a dark sedan parked near the hospital around midnight, but couldn't provide a license plate. A dog walker reported hearing a woman cry out, but thought it was just the wind. Each of these pieces alone seems insignificant, but when you put them together, a pattern begins to emerge. a pattern that suggests Sarah was taken between 11:45 and 12:15 by someone who knew the area well, someone who knew about the security camera blind spots, someone who knew the shift change schedules. Let's talk about forensic technology. In 1974, they had fingerprint analysis, basic blood typing, and not much else. Today, we have DNA sequencing that can identify someone from a single skin cell. We have facial recognition software that can enhance grainy security footage. We have cellular tower data that can track movement. We have databases that can connect seemingly unrelated crimes. If this case happened today, the first 24 hours would look completely different. Sarah's car would be processed for touch DNA. The security camera footage would be enhanced using AI. The area's cell phone records would be subpoenaed. Nearby businesses' security cameras would be checked. License plate reader data would be analyzed. But in 1974, they had none of this. The investigation relied on witness statements and basic forensics. Within 3 months, the case went cold. The file was moved to the basement, the detectives moved on to new cases, and Sarah Mitchell became just another missing person file. Until now. Because what if we could apply modern investigative techniques to this cold case? What if we could look at the evidence with fresh eyes? What if we could use technology that didn't exist 50 years ago to solve a mystery that has haunted this small town for half a century? Let's examine the physical evidence, or rather, the lack thereof. Sarah's car was found 3 days after her disappearance, parked in a grocery store lot 2 miles from the hospital. It had been wiped clean. No fingerprints, no hairs, no fibers, nothing. The investigation assumed this meant a professional job. But what if it meant something else? What if the perpetrator wasn't a professional criminal, but someone who watched crime shows, someone who knew enough to wipe down surfaces, but not enough to avoid leaving other evidence? What if there was touch DNA on that steering wheel that they couldn't test for in 1974? What if there was mitochondrial DNA on the gear shift? What if there was saliva on the seatbelt buckle? Modern DNA testing requires only a few cells, where 1974 technology required substantial samples. Today, we could test all these things and more. We could analyze the pollen on the floor mats to determine where the car had been. We could test the dust in the vents for geographic markers. We could even sequence any bacterial DNA left behind. The time discrepancy is particularly interesting. Sarah clocked out at 11:30, but her car wasn't seen leaving until 12:15. That means she was either still in the building for 45 minutes or she was intercepted between building and car, or she got in her car but didn't leave immediately. Each of these scenarios suggests different possibilities. If she was still in the building, that means she was with someone she trusted enough to stay late with. If she was intercepted between building and car, that suggests violence or coercion. If she was in her car but not leaving immediately, that suggests a conversation or confrontation. The hospital layout shows the distance from the staff entrance to the parking lot was about 200 feet. In thick fog, that walk would take about 3 minutes. So what happened during the other 42 minutes? This is the critical period. This is when the crime occurred. Witness statements from that night are problematic because of the fog. People reported seeing shapes, hearing sounds, but nothing definite. One nurse thought she saw Sarah talking to someone near a car, but couldn't describe the person. Another thought she heard a car door slam, but wasn't sure. A patient reported hearing an argument, but couldn't make out the words. In 1974, investigators dismissed these as unreliable. But today, we would use statement analysis. We would look for patterns in the language. We would look for consistency between witnesses. We would use 3D modeling to recreate the scene and test sight lines and sound propagation. The psychological profile of the perpetrator is also revealing. This was not a violent crime scene. There was no struggle, no blood, no signs of force. This suggests either surprise or compliance. The perpetrator either took Sarah by surprise or she went with them willingly. If it was surprise, that suggests planning and knowledge of her movements. If it was compliance, that suggests trust or coercion. The lack of ransom note or any communication afterwards suggests this was not for money, which eliminates certain motives. The fact that Sarah has never been found is also telling. Most missing persons are found within days, either alive or deceased. The fact that she vanished completely suggests either careful disposal or she is being held somewhere, though after 50 years, the latter seems unlikely. Let's consider some theoretical scenarios based on modern criminal profiling. First, the stranger abduction theory. An opportunistic predator sees a young woman alone in a parking lot and takes her. This explains the lack of connection to her life, but doesn't explain the clean execution. Second, the acquaintance theory. Someone she knew, but not well enough to raise suspicion. Perhaps a hospital visitor or a maintenance worker. This explains the lack of struggle, but doesn't explain the perfect timing. Third, the professional theory. Someone hired to take her. But this seems unlikely given her ordinary life as a nurse, unless she witnessed something or knew something she shouldn't have. Fourth, the voluntary disappearance theory. But this doesn't explain why she would abandon her life, her family, her career without a word and never contact anyone again. Each theory has its strengths and weaknesses, but modern investigative science would approach this differently. Today, we would use geographic profiling to map similar disappearances. We would use behavioral analysis to identify patterns. We would use digital forensics to examine her personal life. We know Sarah had a boyfriend, but they had broken up amicably 6 months earlier. We know she was well liked at work. We know she had no debts, no enemies, no reason to disappear. We know she was planning to visit her family the following weekend. The break in the case might come from unexpected places. Perhaps DNA from an unrelated crime matches touch DNA from her car. Perhaps a deathbed confession from someone involved. Perhaps new technology allows us to enhance the security footage from that night. The important thing is that cold cases are never really cold. As long as someone remembers, as long as someone keeps asking questions, as long as technology keeps advancing, there is always hope for answers. Sarah's family never gave up hope. Her mother passed away 10 years ago, still wondering what happened to her daughter. Her father died 5 years ago, without closure. Her siblings still light a candle for her every year on October 14th. This is why cold cases matter. This is why we keep investigating.
This is why we apply new science to old mysteries, because every victim deserves justice, every family deserves answers, every mystery deserves solution.
Now, I want you to imagine you are the detective on this case. You have all the evidence we've discussed. You have modern technology at your fingertips. What would you do differently? Where would you look that others didn't? What questions would you ask? Would you re-interview all the witnesses using cognitive interviewing techniques? Would you run the DNA through familial databases? Would you use ground-penetrating radar to search areas near the hospital? Would you analyze soil samples from her car tires? Would you check her computer and phone records? The tools available today are remarkable. We can sequence DNA from decades-old evidence. We can enhance audio recordings using AI. We can match pollen samples to specific locations. We can analyze ink and paper from old documents. We can even use isotope analysis to determine where someone has been. But all the technology in the world means nothing without human curiosity, without the determination to seek truth, without the courage to ask difficult questions, without the compassion to remember that behind every cold case file is a real person with dreams and hopes and loved ones. Sarah Mitchell was more than a missing persons case. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a nurse who dedicated her life to helping others. She deserved better than to vanish into the fog. She deserved justice. She deserved to be remembered. And that is why we are here today, not just to solve a mystery, but to honor a life, not just to analyze evidence, but to seek truth, not just to tell a story, but to remember a person. So, let me ask you again, what do you think happened to Sarah Mitchell? Do you think she was taken by a stranger? Do you think she knew her abductor? Do you think she is still alive somewhere? Do you think we will ever know the truth? Your theories matter. Your perspectives matter. Your engagement matters. Because sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see what others missed. Sometimes it takes new technology to find what others couldn't. Sometimes it takes collective wisdom to solve what seemed unsolvable. This is not just about one cold case. This is about every cold case. This is about every missing person. This is about every family waiting for answers. This is about justice delayed, but never forgotten. If you have any information about this case or any cold case, please contact local authorities. If you have theories or insights, please share them in the comments. If you want to see more cold case analyses, please subscribe to this channel. Together, we can keep these stories alive. Together, we can seek truth. Together, we can honor the memories of those who have been lost. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can seek justice. Together, we can find truth. The Ravenswood vanishing, may we one day find the answers we seek. May we one day bring peace to those who wait. May we one day solve the mystery of Sarah Mitchell. Until then, we remember. We honor. We seek truth. We never give up. We never stop asking questions. We never forget that behind every cold case is a human being who mattered, whose life had meaning, whose story deserves to be told. This has been a theoretical analysis of the 1974 Ravenswood vanishing case. All scenarios presented are for educational and discussion purposes only. This is not an official investigation, but rather an exercise in applying modern forensic science to historical cases. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe for more cold case analyses. If you have a cold case you would like us to examine, please suggest it in the comments. If you have information about any unsolved case, please contact appropriate law enforcement agencies. Remember, every piece of information matters. Every theory deserves consideration. Every case deserves attention. Until next time, keep seeking truth, keep asking questions, keep remembering those who have been lost. The fog may have hidden what happened that night in 1974, but it cannot hide the truth forever. Technology advances, science progresses, and one day the mystery of the Ravenswood vanishing may finally be solved. One day Sarah Mitchell may finally have justice. One day her family may finally have peace. Until that day, we remember, we honor, we investigate, we never give up, we never stop looking, we never forget that somewhere out there the truth is waiting to be found. And when we find it, we will not just have solved a case, but honored a life, brought peace to a family, and reminded the world that no one is ever truly forgotten. Thank you for joining me in this investigation. Thank you for caring about cold cases. Thank you for remembering the memory of Sarah Mitchell. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can seek truth. Together, we can find truth. This is Grace Thompson signing off, but not giving up. Always investigating, always remembering, always seeking truth. Until every case is solved, until every family has answers, until justice is served for all who have been
Want to
lost.
hear from you. What's your theory on what happened to Sarah Mitchell? Which clue do you think is the most important? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find these kinds of deep dives into unsolved mysteries as fascinating as I do, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.